Welcome to episode 6 of Meat Matters, where we get to the meat of the matter on everything beef. Now, with my recent travels, I've been asking myself the biggest question: what is RMIF and what kind of role does it play in the South African red meat industry? And I mean, Devil, you can answer that for me,
Yeah.
right?
Hello, Mac.
Are we? Lekker, my bra.
Are you good?
I'm good, no complaints.
Great. The RMIF consists of 13 role players, and it stands for the Red Meat Industry Forum in South Africa. Now, the Red Meat Industry Forum are the custodians of red meat. They look after health issues of the animals, they look after the primary producers, they look after the feedlots, the abattoirs, and everybody in this value chain. On the RMIF, like I said, we've got 13 representatives, and even the Consumer Goods Council are included in there, as well as labor, and at the end of the value chain, the retailers are also included in there. Now, the RMIF looks after traceability, for example. They look after technology, development, transformation, and all is done within the scope of these 13 role players on the RMIF.
So you've been traveling around the country and you see different kind of cattle. The big question here is, Devil, what type of cattle do the South African feedlot prefer?
I can tell you, Mac, that we've getting that question a lot, specifically in the feedlots. I think a lot of the primary producers would ask the feedlot owners, what type of cattle would you want in your feedlot? And the answer is very simple, and it's always the same. The one that grows the best. But at the end of the day, it all depends on where the feedlot is situated, and specifically what type of breed he prefers. Now, obviously, most of them are male calves, and they would normally be between 8 to 10 months, and they would need to have the potential to be able to grow to between 450 and 470 kilograms, to be an A class, and that is over a 120-day period. Now, obviously, we have a lot of breeds in South Africa, and we've got crossbreeds even. But those would include Bonsmara, Brahman, Simmentaler, Hereford, Sussex, etc. And those are specifically confined to specific geographical areas. For example, if you look at the drier parts of South Africa, like Limpopo, you'll see that you get a lot of Brahman there. That is where they suit the best.
Now, we came across a trend where you've been asking more and more questions in terms of where your food comes from. And this brings up the subject of traceability. Joining us next, Michelle Frances Pariachi. Stay tuned in.
That's right, Mac, with us today to talk about traceability, barcoding, and the importance of it is Michelle Frances Pariachi from GS1. Welcome, Michelle. Please introduce yourself. Who are you? What do you do? Not why are you here, we know why you're here, but who are you?
Thanks, Geovald. So I'm Michelle Frances Pariachi. I'm part of the Consumer Goods Council of South Africa, and I head up the GS1 division. And GS1 is a unique organization because we're across the world in 115 countries across the world, and we service over 2 million companies that use the standards.
Sure.
And you might know, but everything that goes across that point of sale is a result of a GS1 standard. Imagine if we didn't have those unique identifiers.
Everything we buy.
Everything you buy within a retail sector or from a butchery, and have a look at that book.
Well, there's a
got
barcode.
a
Is it that barcode there?
That's it.
And that's GS1.
And that's GS1.
Okay.
You know, I normally like to say that we're the home affairs of product identifiers. So imagine the safety that consumers get to know that anytime you manufacture something, or the industry, whether it's food, non-food manufacturing something, you want to know where that product comes from, right? And you need to have a legitimate number to identify that product.
Correct.
And that's what we do. You know, we govern that process and how members talk to each other through trading languages. That's really what GS1 does. And as I said, we're a division of the Consumer Goods Council of South Africa.
Okay.
Now, tell us about GS1 and the role you play, especially in the agricultural industry.
I think that's a great question, and I think a few people understand that within the agricultural process, you know, you often talk about farm to fork, or you know, that steak on, you know, where from the cow to onto your plate. Now, the role that GS1 plays, we are not just about the barcodes and the numbers. We go beyond that. We are about traceability, about tracking which farm, what animals on the farm, what happened to those animals on the farm, what vaccine did you give those animals, which fertilizers were put onto the crops that maybe you're feeding these animals. Consumers want to know that today, right?
Yeah.
And this is what GS1 does. GS1 builds a common framework to make it simple for industry to know how to track and trace their products and help consumers feel safe. If you think about going into a Pick and Pay or a ShopRite or a Spar or a Massmart or a Woolies, any one of you would want to know, does that person know where that animal came from?
Yeah.
Where that carrot came from,
Yeah.
right? And that's what we do. We enable that common language of sharing data. We're all about big data and a common framework to simplify that business language, Dewald. So you'll say, I went to a farm, and you want the geographic locations of that farm where that animal was bred, right? What we do is bring the how that's done and the why that's done from a compliance perspective as well.
Michelle, I think I understand it, and I think I do. If you look at a traceability system, which I think this could be part of, because this is not, as I see it, not a traceability system in itself. It can be, and it can link onto something. What and how does it integrate with a business partner's processes? How do you foster better public and private partnerships and collaboration to address the weaknesses in the agricultural space? Because you mentioned it now about carrots, but do we really know currently, as it stands, what happens on a farm? How many vaccines has it been given, etc.? Do we know it currently? Can GS1 tell it now?
Yeah, so through the use of the GS1 standard, right, it's not an IT system per se.
Yeah.
It allows organizations that have traceability systems, whether it's in your own ERPs or at point of sale, to have these unique identifiers. And that data is then put into these linear barcodes or 2D barcodes where you can tell the lot, the batch, the expiry date. But if you backward trace it from the beginning of the farm, we can say which farm, which animal, through events, right? And we then train all of our member organizations across the world on what standard. And we are recognized by ISO through the HACCP 22005 as the how traceability should be done. Because, Dewald, you don't want to do your own thing, right? You don't want any of the retailers or the manufacturers, whether that be the big manufacturers from Tiger Brands or Pioneer Foods to the smaller guys like Amcar or Rhodes Foods or RCL, which produces meat products, right? You don't want them doing their own thing, so that once they then share that information, that it becomes connected. Because that's what interoperability is about, right?
What we're saying is, are we saying that if I've got a barcode and it is a piece of fillet that is exported to Timbuktu, and it comes there and they uses GS1, the GS1 standard, they can scan it there. As part of traceability, they know exactly where it comes from. Correct. They've got all the information as well.
Exactly. So what we do is if you take this barcode, and I wish I had my phone here for this, and you scan it, what will it do? It'll do a digital link, right, to the information sitting in your systems that can be publicly shared with the consumer. And this is where the European Union, where the FDA in the States is going, even with China. Food is critical. Yes. For our supply chains, for our food security. If we don't know where it's coming from, and consumers want to know, we enable, through a simple scan, how to link up to all these data sets that talk to each other and make it simple for consumers to know exactly where that product comes from. So we're the how to connect that data, how to talk a common language and simplify, we demystify that big data thing, right? Yeah, yeah. We make it simple for business partners to talk to each other.
And you're already internationally recognized.
And we're internationally recognized. I was just telling one of the Rian earlier that we're 50 years old this year, sure. Right?
Oh, congrats.
The first barcode was on a Wrigley's chewing gum. And if we didn't put these barcodes on whether that meat product or non-foods product, you'd be standing longer at point of sale. So they can link it to their price data. They know which manufacturer it came out at point of sale. And you're able to connect all of this information, right? That's amazing. That's just completely amazing. That's what we enable.
But I guess also you've created, trust, because you don't buy anything without a barcode on. That's the first thing. The price is there, but you always look for that barcode. I guess it's trust, right?
Yeah. So that's what we say. Identification builds trust, and trust starts with a number. Now imagine you know that number, like I have an identity number, I can trade within South Africa. But when I need to travel to the USA or to another country, I need a passport.
Yeah.
But with this on your product, you have one uniquely, globally unique identifier that allows you to export your goods. And they trust, even European Union or China or the US trust, that you're using a standard and that number that's globally unique, nobody else can have it, it's just like a fingerprint, will be able to link all of these other events about your product. Where, like I said, where it's coming from, what happened to that product, how was that animal fed? I mean, that's just amazing. And if we in South Africa, you ask me the question, how do we promote public-private benefit? I firmly believe, honestly, that this is an industrial policy instrument. If organizations like the trade forums or the Department of Trade and Industry can recognize this is the sole identification layer and traceability framework, imagine how much easier is it going to be for both localization, for farmers to embrace that they can secure what products are hitting consumers. Because given COVID, everything is about track and trace. You want to know where that vaccine came from. You want to know from which shop these products can be found. And this is our jobs, is to work with industries and custodians of processes like yourself within the meat industry to ensure that we can talk that common language and just demystify that data sharing bit.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Is there a way, if I go into a shop, you said if you had your phone here, is there something for me? I can scan it on a barcode and know anything about it?
Yes, there are common barcode scanning apps that scans both these 2D or linear barcodes.
Okay.
And because GS1 is able a thing called a digital link, you scan it and it searches the web. I don't think you know that on the 26th of Feb, Google launched a press release, which I think I must share with the forum, that GS1 identifiers are the identifiers for all things within the digital space. So if you scan a barcode today of any product, take that hand sanitizer sitting there, and you do a Google search, you'll see the digital footprint of it on the internet simply by scanning that product.
Oh,
Imagine that, right? But it's your suppliers, it's your brand owners, it's your retailers putting that digital footprint. So we bridge that gap between the physical world and the digital world by automating our supply chains and that value chain, by linking those data sets in a common method.
So I've got an iPhone, I can actually just point the camera to a specific barcode and it's supposed to take me in there.
Yes, if they're linking it on that barcode
Yes.
and it scans and there's a digital link, it will take you to their website. So please try it with a product and see the digital footprint that comes up on the internet. So that's really awesome for data exchanges.
So now, before we let you go, Michelle, I believe that Taryn Daniels from GS1 will be heading up traceability adoption. How is she planning to achieve this?
Great. So General Daniels, we in the organization and even our CEO on board recognize the importance of track and trace and traceability. And I think we're all aware that maybe GS1 is not so well known, right? So her job is to educate and enable. And through our audit certifications, our traceability auditor certifications, she's going to enable all brand owners or farmers in the agri, the technical industry or the mining or the clothing industry space to understand the value of track and trace. And then we give training programs, via the Consumer Goods Council and enable them to understand this language, simplify it, and then set them up to remove those trade barriers. So that's one of her big jobs, is to facilitate the enablement to training, and she will do that. But also what we want to start doing is working with the universities. We want to work with the universities, like in other countries, that allow our supply chain and procurement and agricultural practitioners to understand the value of traceability and to understand that there is a GS1 traceability beyond the barcode, which helps us facilitate this common word of identify your product, understand where it's moving, what are the critical events you want to track across the supply chain, and just really help even the youngsters coming in and entrepreneurs for localization say, why do you want to protect your brand? Through having a traceability standard that can easily be implemented in your day-to-day lives. That's really her job, is to simplify the language and educate and enable all our brand owners and retailers across the country.
Thank you so much for joining us today. I think next time around, I won't scan Devil's temperature, I'll scan his barcode.
Scan my barcode. Just say that again. You said something about trust. What is it?
Trust starts with a number.
Yeah, trust starts
Starts with a
number.
unique number. That's
That's a
it.
good one.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Good to
This
have
is
you.
fun.
Yeah.
Today we are very pleased to have with us a South African sporting legend. He's won the London to Brighton Marathon 3 times. He's run between Durban and Pietermaritzburg and won the Comrades Marathon 9 times. And he's the former world record holder over 50 miles and 100 kilometers. But I can beat him. It's none other than Bruce Fordyce.
Bruce, thank you for joining us. Normally I ask the people, please introduce yourself, but I don't think you need any introductions. Maybe just tell us, how did you start running?
Well, Divelt, I started on June the 8th, 1976, with one specific aim in mind, and that was to run the Comrades Marathon. And I was at Wits University at the time in residence, and I went to the Wits rugby fields at night because I didn't want anyone to see me, and I ran for 10 minutes. And that was the greatest gift I ever gave myself in my life, because from that came a life of joy out of my sport that I love so much.
So wait, after the 10 minutes,
Yeah.
was it then when you decided that this is the journey that I'm taking?
No, I'd already decided before. So I only had one aim in mind, and that was to run the Comrades Marathon. 1976, on television, they didn't used to show the race live. They would show a package version if I saw it. But there were a number of factors. My girlfriend broke up with me, so suppressed libido. And then this one was very close to me. A week later, 10 days later, was June 16, 1976. And as a passionate Wits student, a whole bunch of us tried to march in solidarity with the students, and we got murdered by the police. And so I was very depressed and sad, and running gave me some kind of control of my destiny, some kind of purpose in life. So those factors all came together, and I ran the following year's Comrade.
I have to say that Bruce started running before I was born.
There
Only
were a
a few
lot of other
months.
things before you were born. Yeah, gee, 76, I was already shaving and old guy.
So I also understand that you brought Park Run to South Africa. I mean, why establish it here?
Yeah, look, parkrun is, for me, one of the greatest things that you can ever imagine. It's about health and exercise, but most importantly, it's about communities. It's about people coming together. So it was started by a South African in the UK, and he asked me, Paul Sinton-Hewitt, he asked me to start it in South Africa. We started one parkrun, Delta Park. 26 people came. And when we last looked, we had 230 parkruns around southern Africa, because we're moving into Africa, and 1.2 million members.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
It's massive. Have you done a park run?
I haven't done a park
Oh,
run
the
yet,
shame.
funny enough. You know,
The shame of it.
I don't know why, but I normally see, it's
You
always
will.
trending down on social media when, obviously.
You
the
should
race
actually
comes.
go to, I don't know if the Voortrekker Monument has got one still. You
Yeah,
need to
yeah.
run there. Is it still there?
It's got a hell of a...
Is it a challenge? Are you with? Are you
Yes,
with me?
I'm in it.
Okay,
No,
cool. Then
no
done.
shame in walking that hill, by the way.
COVID has changed so many things for us. We understand parkrun is not currently operational in the parks. And what can people do to exercise wisely at home? And how do they keep healthy and fit, Bruce?
Well, yeah, sadly, we're waiting with bated breath for when we can bring parkrun back, and we will come back, and we'll come back strongly. But you can exercise, just exercise. We're allowed to exercise outside.
Sure.
I ran with my running group this morning. Got a group of people. We get there, we're all the correct protocols and everything, but we run together. Or you can run on your own, or you can gym on your own, or you can go to a gym. I mean, you've just got to get started. And the key is that you've got to make it a regular occurrence so that eventually it becomes a habit. And if you miss a day or two, you start to get irritated because you've missed out on your habit.
Maybe one of the questions, I run 3 times a week, short runs in the week and a longer run on the weekends. What is far enough to run? I mean, you said you started with 10 minutes. What?
I always say half an hour to the point of perspiration
Okay.
is a kind of a minimal run for me. But, sometimes if you manage 20 minutes, so what? And you also mustn't be afraid to walk. And I can always spot a beginner, by the way. I love it. I can spot a beginner. They're hating every minute. They're dressed in a tracksuit when actually it's just a cool morning. It's not freezing. And they're definitely not going to do it tomorrow. You've got to make it as easy as possible in the beginning, and then you'll get hooked. And once you get hooked, you won't ever stop.
So here's a question, because I know a diet is very important, especially in your case. How important is South African red meat as part of your diet?
Well, I mean, how important is the braai?
Yeah.
That's the answer. For me, it's absolutely critical. I love meat, and it's I don't want to start getting into contentious areas or whatever, but I'm a complete Tim Noakes fan, and I'm a Banting fan, so I eat a lot of protein, a lot of meat. And I'm not scared of fat either, and it's critical. I think muscle, all that sort of thing. If you get, I'd be lost if I didn't have meat in my diet.
I totally agree with you.
Yeah, I ran a marathon in Sydney a couple of years ago, just after we'd beaten the All Blacks in New Zealand. So it's hard to beat the All Blacks in New Zealand. And I was running, and a South African in the crowd shouted out, obviously, and an Aussie shouted out, "And now we braai." Because that's what you do when you just beaten the All Blacks. Yeah.
You braai.
Yeah, you braai.
Well, you use any opportunity to braai. Bruce, you've been an inspiration to so many of us. And what would you like to say to everyone out there regarding running? And when do you think parkrun will open again? Obviously, you say soon, but are there timelines?
Okay, well, first of all, what would I like to say about running? I'm not an evangelist for running. You know, if you don't like running, you don't, please, sure. I'm not trying to persuade you, but exercise is critical. So exercise, whatever your favorite, might be swimming, it might be cycling, it might be walking, that's fine. We need to get doing that. And what I love about parkrun, it doesn't include the swimming, but you can walk at parkrun and you can run. We will be back as soon as we can, but we have to wait for the numbers, outdoor gatherings in sufficient numbers. Unfortunately, we're victims of our own success. So parkrun is so big that our numbers at some parkruns are so big. 2,500 people at Durban North Beach parkrun.
Yes, 2,500.
Yep. Yeah, that's our record there. So once we can get to those numbers, we're back. But before that, we can't risk any kind of reputational damage to parkrun. Look what parkrun did. You know, they went ahead selfishly or whatever. Yeah. And so we're waiting with bated breath, but we're patient and we know we'll be back.
Yeah, we're all excited.
Bruce, thank you very much for joining us, and good luck with the future.
Yeah,
and we'll see you at the nearest parkrun.
See you at a parkrun. Where do you live? Delta Park. Delta's got a hill.
No, we'll do
5K is free on a Saturday morning. Don't forget your barcode. There you are. I've just given you the slogan.
Yeah, don't forget your GS1.
Your GS1 barcode. Yes, we just spoke about the barcode. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Lovely having you. Good.
We are very pleased that we have one of South Africa's premier journalists and commentators on ICT communications technology and the head of Worldwide Works. Please welcome Arthur Goldstuck.
Thank you.
Good day, Arthur. It's Dewald speaking. Please tell us about yourself. Where do you come from? What do you exactly do? Who is Arthur Goldstuck?
Hi, Dewald. Thanks for having me on your platform. It's an unusual audience for me to speak to, but not an unusual topic, because it's something I've been following for a few decades, looking at technology in agriculture. My background is as a journalist, but for the last 21 years, I've been running a market research company called Worldwide Works. And the data that we collect, the insights that we gather from that, also then feeds back into my writing. So I've remained a journalist. I write weekly columns for the Sunday Times and for the Citizen on technology trends and gadgets and the like. The big break for me was 26 years ago now, when I wrote a book called The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Internet. And that made me by default the country's internet expert. There are a lot of people who know far more than I do, but I happened to write the book, and that really created the platform and the foundation for becoming deeply ingrained in the world of technology, connectivity, the internet, and the digital revolution that is now clearly transforming the world. It has been for the last 30 years, but it's only now that most people are becoming deeply aware of it. So this has been a good time for me, because it's been an opportunity for me to really apply all of this knowledge and information and insights gained over the past 30 years to the needs of people today.
Brilliant. I just want to tell you, you actually then, Arthur, used your book as part of my dissertation for my LLB. And I actually had reference to that. Yes.
That's great to hear. Thank you.
Now, how important is IT security when it comes to the agricultural industry in South Africa?
Well, first we need to look at what the agricultural industry is using IT for. And when you start looking at it from that perspective, then you can see why IT security is so important. But I guess to step back even further, IT security is important for any kind of business. And it doesn't matter whether you're in farming, in banking, or in something high-tech like blockchain and bitcoins and the like. The starting point for IT security is in your communication. If your communication isn't secure, and then I'm talking about email, WhatsApp, even SMS, if your communication isn't secure, then the information that you are sharing isn't secure. And once your information isn't secure, your entire business becomes insecure. So that's not just the starting point, but really the overarching requirement that all your information, all your data be secure, but your activity also has to be secure. And by activity, I mean when you are using technology that's especially connected to the internet, when you are using automated systems that you control remotely, and when you are using sensors that gather information and aggregate them via the internet, then all of that has to be secured. If it's not secured, one of two primary things can happen. The first is that someone can access all of that data and information, but secondly, and probably more damaging, is they can manipulate it, and they can get your systems to do things that will directly damage your business. But both of those categories can be equally damaging.
I think one of the biggest things, if I say in my industry and farmers, primary producers and so on, is the cost of data and access to data, meaning the internet specifically. Arthur, I think if you look at the farms, it's not that farmers do not want to use technology, it's just the excessive cost attached to that. And it's easier to write on the back of your cigarette carton and remember it later because you'll have it and you know that it's not, what do they say, in the clouds. What can we look forward to? Is this going to change in South Africa per se? Because I think a lot of trouble hinges on the cost and specifically the accessibility of the internet or data.
You're absolutely correct. There are three categories of connectivity that farmers in particular can choose from, but generally speaking, only one of those is practical. So the first that we are getting in the cities now, but increasingly in smaller towns, is fiber connectivity. And generally the farmer will only have access to fiber if there's a fiber line running past their farm, and it's cost effective to have a link from that line onto the farm. But most farms won't have that option. The second is mobile data or mobile broadband. And there again, it's feasible where you have a cell phone tower close to the farmhouse. And for many farms in isolated areas, that's also not viable. There's supposed to be 98% coverage of the geography of South Africa by 4G connectivity. But very often, and farmers will relate quite strongly to this, I believe, it might be a 4G tower, but by the time it reaches you, because you're so far from the tower, it's the equivalent of the old 2G, the GSM connectivity that you could only just make a voice call and you could send SMS, but completely inadequate for data access. And when it is accessible for data access, it's exceptionally expensive, because it's going to be slow if you're in a rural area, and it means it's going to take that much longer to get stuff through. So it's not just the cost of the data, but the cost of the time and effort to get information through that system. The third is the most viable alternative, which farmers have been using for a few decades now, and that is satellite connectivity. I remember having a chat with the guys from Landbou Weekblad about 20 years ago, maybe even more, where they did the first study of satellite connectivity among farmers. And we started surveying small and medium enterprises back in 2003 about what technology they use. And we discovered that amongst farmers that saw themselves as SMEs, small and medium enterprises, the use of satellite connectivity was the highest, even at that stage where dial-up was most common amongst general SMEs. satellite was already the most common amongst farmers. And as SMEs moved from dial-up to ADSL over that decade, farmers still stuck to satellite because they didn't have access to ADSL. Now the shift, the same shift we saw from dial-up to ADSL has happened from ADSL to fiber. And even there, we are finding that farmers still are having to stick to satellite. The fortunate thing is that satellite technology has evolved, satellite communications has evolved, but it still remains expensive. And there's a major issue with what they call latency. Latency is the delay from when you click a button on your computer and the web page loads or the signal comes back or the message comes back. In effect, the time it takes for your message to go up into the internet and for whatever you asked to happen to then be confirmed back on your computer. So even a banking transaction, for example, can have high latency via satellite. So you will click to make a transaction, but it can take so long for that transaction to be confirmed that you might in fact find it lapses. So that's the danger and the difficulty with satellite connectivity, is that latency that can result in a very frustrating experience. So the biggest challenge of all is to bring down the latency, but also to bring down the cost of satellite connectivity because it can be very expensive. And the faster, the more expensive as well. That is about to change thanks to a boy from Pretoria, who you may have heard of, Elon Musk.
Okay.
And
Boytjie van Pretoria,
yeah. So he started, he went to school first in Pretoria, then in Johannesburg, and he started university in South Africa, but eventually moved to Canada and finally to America, where he started the company that would become PayPal. And that's how he made his first several millions and several hundreds of millions. And then he started Tesla and SpaceX. And through SpaceX, he has created a business called Starlink. And Starlink is the technology that South Africans are going to experience most directly from Elon Musk. He's not keen to sell his cars here. He's not keen to launch rockets from here, but he is certainly keen for us to use his satellite connectivity service.
Now, since you're mentioning technology, I mean, we've been seeing great advancements in the agricultural industry. Tell us more about the latest AI and drone developments.
The big development and a big evolution, and also big news from South Africa, is the evolution of drones for monitoring crops and for evaluating crops. And the reason why it's such a strong South African story is because there's a company based in Cape Town called Aerobotics that has become a world leader in drone technology for agriculture. So Aerobotics started out showing how they could use drones with high resolution cameras, video cameras, to film and map crops in the Western Cape winelands in particular and on the fruit farms. So apple crops, grapes, and the like. They could film that, and using infrared cameras as well, could then start assessing the state of the crop. Now that technology, the camera technology, has advanced dramatically over the last decade or so. And today, using video technology, advanced video technology with artificial intelligence that analyzes the video footage, they are able to create intelligent maps of the crops, of the condition of the crops, and even the condition of the soil. And based on that, can determine where more energy needs to be expended, what crops are ready for harvesting, or at what stage of harvesting they are, so that you can plan better your harvesting process. And then the planting process as well, based on the condition of the soil. So more and more we are starting to see artificial intelligence being used to evaluate soil conditions as well as crop conditions. And just in the last week, an American university announced that they had found a way of using ordinary cell phones with artificial intelligence to assess the conditions of soil, for example. So link that with drones, link it with cell phones, and link it with the amount of information that can be processed online, and you can see how this technology can really take farmers into a new era of efficiency.
Arthur, I'm glad you defined AI as artificial intelligence, because in the livestock industry, AI means artificial insemination. So, although almost the same, not quite. Maybe just one question on Elon's launch. What is he bringing to South Africa? You say Starlink, but what would he be bringing to South Africa?
So he won't actually bring it to South Africa physically unless you sign up to his service. But initially, it wasn't available in South Africa when they first launched it. It's still not available, but it wasn't available for pre-order either. But now you can actually sign up and you can pay a deposit. So what's going to happen is that you will pay $499 for what they call a Starlink kit. And that will include a terminal and an antenna on a tripod, so that you can position it in the right spot to get the best signal. And with that will come a Wi-Fi router. So in effect, you're going to have a mini satellite ground station costing you, say, $500, which right now is going to be 7,500 Rand, roughly. But that will then give you high-speed access to the internet. The Wi-Fi router will connect the signal to whatever systems you have within reach in the farm. So most likely it will be next to the farmhouse or even on top of the farmhouse to get the best signal. And then it will cost you $99 a month. So it's not cheap. It's around 1,500 Rand a month. But that's not a lot more than what you're paying for fiber today. And to get the kind of speed that they're offering for that price is going to be a massive advantage. The most significant thing about it is that it's going to offer speeds from 50 megs per second upwards. And that's what you're at the moment getting, either if you're in the heart of a city with 4G or 5G access, good access that is, you're going to get that kind of speed, but also with fiber, you can get 50 megs per second upwards. So that is the first advantage is the price for the speeds you're getting, but then the other issue is the latency. And the key thing with Starlink is that these will be low orbit satellites and there will be a large array of them. So currently the reason satellite access is so expensive is that you only have a few satellites from which you can get a signal. They're in high orbit or far orbit, and that means there's high latency and it's also very high cost. Now, SpaceX, Elon Musk's space business, has already launched well over 1,000 of these satellites. So they're already in orbit around Earth. They can already be tested from certain places. But by the time it's fully rolled out in around 2022, they expect to have 12,000 satellites.
It is brilliant talking to you. I enjoyed it, and we look forward to, I think people can search for Starlink, farmers who look at this. And we're looking forward to the future. I think there's so many things happening currently in the agricultural industry with regards to technology. And the farming industry and agriculture keeps on reinventing itself over and over. So thank you very much for speaking to us.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Have a good day.
Right, I'm pleased to introduce our next weekly segment, Ryan on Beef. He's our slight crazy. You know him. He's crazy. He's a beef lover who helps us all get the most out of beef. And this time around, he's gone Mexican mad with his very own Churrasco. I don't know what that is, but check this video out.
Hi, and welcome to this episode of Ryan on Beef. Just in time with these chilly winter nights, we've got the perfect solution for you. from South African beef. Although we're taking inspiration from all over the world with my Mexican churrasco. You're going to love this one. So, yeah, churrasco is a Portuguese or Spanish word for a beef dish. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a magical Mexican spin on it. Mexican flavors blow my mind every time I enjoy them. Let me show you how. So first we'll start off with this magnificent pulled beef that I've got over here. This pulled beef, I put it on this morning in my slow cooker, and I literally covered my piece of brisket, which I used, with my favorite wine. You can use stock, you can use anything you like, but let the cooker do everything for you, because when you get home, it's ready for you to pull apart, add your favorite smoky barbecue sauce to it, and you've got the perfect pulled beef. Well, perfect I say, not quite yet. Earlier on I mentioned about something amazing from Mexico. Sweet and delicious fried and crunchy churros. Churros are normally filled with donut cream, but I took the churros, I fried them off crisp and crunchy. So what I'm going to do is put this beautiful combination of sweet and crunch all over my beautiful dish of pulled beef like this. You know what it does? It gives the pulled beef that amazing crunch in your mouth that you're really, really looking for. We're Mexican, and I'm from Durban, so I like a bit of heat. And literally sprinkle over the beautiful hot chilies. You know what? It needs a bit of freshening up. What better than the great Mexican ingredient called coriander? Please remember, whoever told you that you have to, not use these stalks, they're wrong, because you're missing out on an absolute huge amount of this incredible, incredible flavor. So this bowl of hugs that I've got in my hand is the perfect balance for a winter's evening. Think about that incredible crunch from the Mexican churro with the soft tenderness of South African beef. Add to that the incredible sweet that goes and balances the smokiness of the barbecue sauce. Absolute perfection in a bowl. But I tell you what, I think I need to test out for myself. Oh. I can just imagine being at home with the family, and I promise you, if you make this for your family, everyone's going to be smiling back at you. But I think I need to celebrate this one. It's properly good. As they say with that magical liquid from Mexico, arriba! Join me again next time on Ryan on Beef, when I'll be bringing it all the way home with the most magnificent biltong potjiekos.
Welcome back to Meat Matters, Ryan.
It's good to be here, Mac. How are you?
No, I'm good. I see that you're having fun over there.
How are you, Diewald, as well?
Doing very, very well. Sleeping a little bit less than normally, but doing well. Thank you.
Well, I've got something here. As you can see, it's all about lightening the load. You would have seen in my beef churrasco. And by the way, if anybody ever asks you what is a churrasco, you're going to have to give them my explanation, because I made it up.
I thought it's something that does like Mexican churrasco.
So I took two of my favorite things in the world. You saw it there, the churro, which is a delicious, sweet, delectable, amazingly delicious Mexican item. And I bought in on a sweet beef, South African beef. And I kid you not, some people will call me a little bit loco, but it doesn't matter.
Ryan, now give us the answer once and for all. Is it gas, charcoal, or wood for a braai, and why?
The amount of times I've been asked this. Okay, so gas is definitely no, unless you were born in an American sitcom and you are doing hot dogs on the barbecue. We don't do that. We braai. Okay, so gas, no. Second best, charcoal. The best of the best, absolutely would.
Would.
If you were ever looking for that incredible flavor of a braai, it comes from wood that's been burnt down to become its own charcoal. And all that beautiful smoke that comes up gives us that traditional braai flavor. Now, I know this. It takes a bit longer for you to do a wood-based braai, but do yourself a favor, the results are worth the wait. And if you ever wondered why anybody said, no gaan ons braai, actually the truth was they were waiting for the wood to come right.
There's always a delay. Thank you, Ryan. Thanks for joining us.
What a pleasure. See you guys next time. Thank you, Diabol.
It's lag. It's the lagging effect. Thank you, Ryan. Good to see you again.
Braai latency. I love it.
I'm Mac Rabapali, and on behalf of Devald Olivier and the South African Feedlot Association, thank you for joining us on Meat Matters. See you on the next episode for more on the best of beef. Be healthy, be safe, and keep enjoying South African beef. Click, like, share, comment. Ciao.
And keep on running.